Hello, and welcome to our webinar series, Candid Conversations on Health. Throughout the year, we have tackled a variety of topics related to our health and wellness. The focus of today's final webinar is American Diabetes Month. My name is Ayana Usuri, and I am the support coordinator for the Louisiana Department of Health's Bureau of Community Partnerships and Health Equity, also known as BCPHE. The Bureau of Community Partnerships and Health Equity is devoted to increasing the citizens of Louisiana's knowledge about what affects our health, and especially for those in particularly vulnerable communities and populations. This devotion is rooted in raising awareness through webinars like today's and partnering with stakeholders in the community to move toward a healthier Louisiana. At this time, I will share a video from the American Diabetes Association about American Diabetes Month, followed by their Health Equity Bill of Rights.
First, the shock hits you. Then, the worry hits you.
And wears on you.
Day in
and day out.
Then, the cost hits you.
here and
Everywhere.
Right now.
So you try to hit back by working more, only to manage it less.
Then the rationing starts.
Rationing your time.
Your energy. And then sadly,
Dangerously
Rationing insulin.
today's diabetes hits different.
different than it did 2 years ago.
different types and stereotypes.
Different risk factors before,
And complications after.
Diferentes comunidades afectadas.
But today, there are different ways to hit back.
new and advanced technologies to better manage diabetes.
Better resources to educate ourselves.
And a community.
Más fuertes que nunca.
Today's diabetes hits different.
But then again,
So do we.
All right, just a wonderful video from the American Diabetes Association. So the American Diabetes Association also published a Health Equity Bill of Rights, and as the Community Partnerships and Health Equity Bureau with the Louisiana Department of Health, I felt it was important to highlight these to start today's webinar. The first is the right to access insulin and other drugs affordably, the right to healthy food, the right to insurance that covers diabetes management and future cures, the right not to face stigma or discrimination, the right to avoid preventable amputations, the right to participate in clinical trials without fear, the right to stop pre-diabetes from becoming diabetes, the right to a built environment that does not put you at a greater risk for getting diabetes, the right to the latest medical advances, and last but not least, the right to have your voice heard. For more information about these health equity rights, please visit this website on the screen, www.diabetes.org/healthequitynow. These are important matters for all of us to be concerned of. So now on to our presentation for today. So this is our event outline. We're doing our intro and welcome right now. We'll discuss our facts related to American Diabetes Month. Then we'll have our panel discussion and follow up with those key takeaways. So the objective of this webinar is to increase awareness of diabetes for citizens of Louisiana. So first, more than 37 million people in the United States have diabetes, and 1 in 5 of them don't know it. Specifically for Louisiana, more than 1.2 million people, roughly around 34% of the adult population, have prediabetes due to higher than normal blood sugar levels. So in order to prevent and treat diabetes, this involves understanding the various types, recognizing the factors associated with increased risk, and making certain lifestyle changes. That's why it's important to get up-to-date and accurate information from credible sources related to diabetes, like the Louisiana Department of Health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the American Diabetes Association, your healthcare provider, and more. These are 4 facts that you will hear throughout the webinar. I want to stress the importance of getting information from trustworthy sources, as I mentioned. So please only share trustworthy websites like the Louisiana Department of Health, CDC, and the like. And we will also provide you with a one-pager via email after this session to aid you in how to share diabetes info as well. Sharing accurate information can help save lives. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Bureau of Community Partnerships and Health Equity Director, Devondra Brown.
Hi, Ms. Usuri. I can't do there we go. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Usuri, for that. And thank you all for joining our conversation, candid conversation on Health American Diabetes Month webinar. I hope that you all find today's discussion informative and helpful. Before we start, here's some information for those who have Medicaid as their health insurance. If your medical insurance coverage is from Medicaid, then you must make sure that your information is up to date. This includes your address. If you do not update your information, you may miss important letters from Medicaid and you could lose your health insurance coverage. To update your information, you can visit the self-service portal at www.ldh.la.gov/my-Medicaid, or you can call 1-888-342-6207. So without further ado, today's moderator is Dr. Lakeisha Williams. Dr. Lakeisha Williams earned a Bachelor of Science and Doctor of Pharmacy from Xavier University of Louisiana and a Master of Science in Public Health from Tulane University School of Public Health. These academic and research experiences, coupled with her personal experiences, have fostered her commitment to improving health disparities through clinical pharmacy practice, teaching, research, and community engagement. She is currently a clinical associate professor in the College of Pharmacy at Xavier University of Louisiana and serves as the Director of Community Engagement and Outreach for the Center for Minority Health and Health Disparities Research and Education, as well as the Director of Community Engagement and Outreach Core for the National Institute of Health funded research centers in minority institutions. In addition, she serves as a clinical pharmacist and maintains a pharmacy practice site at an outpatient ambulatory care clinic in the greater New Orleans area, focusing on medication and chronic disease state management, with the aim to mitigate disparities among underserved, uninsured, and vulnerable populations. Dr. Williams also engages in clinical and community participatory research and community outreach that focuses on the development of interventions to improve chronic disease management, medication adherence, and mitigate sex and racial health disparities among elderly and vulnerable populations with chronic illnesses. Give me 1 second. With chronic conditions, including hypertension, diabetes, cancer, and women's men's health. Her research is published in several peer-reviewed journals, such as the American Journal of the Medical Science, Journal of Investigative Medicine, and the Journal of Interprofessional Education and Practice. In addition, Dr. Williams has received various awards and served as one of the principal leads for the Louisiana Community Engagement Alliance, the Orleans Director of the Louisiana Pharmacists Association, and a board member of the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship and Malia Neighborhood Association, a member of the American Society of Consultant Pharmacists, the American Society of Health System Pharmacists, and the American Pharmacists Association. So we are very pleased to have this very busy woman as our moderator for tonight, extremely accomplished. Dr. Lakeisha Williams, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Devondra Brown. I truly appreciate it. And Miss Usuri, just for being able to lead this awesome webinar. And I appreciate the opportunity of being able to serve as today's moderator. And for each of you community members, stakeholders, all of you who have just took time out of your busy schedule to attend this important discussion, thank you so much for being here. And in this webinar, our hope is that what you hear, you will find useful, you will find it empowering, and you will also find it encouraging. And most importantly, we want you to leave here this conversation empowered with knowledge related to diabetes that can be applied to your daily lives. And I'm very excited to say that we have just a huge trusted gatekeepers from around the state that you will hear from in a few, who will lead and be a part of this discussion. And so before further going forward to our panel discussion, I want to be able to introduce to you our esteemed group of panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Eric Griggs, also known as Doc Griggs. And he is a New Orleans-based community medicine doctor and health educator who has dedicated his professional life to raising health and wellness awareness in communities nationally and internationally. In addition to being recently appointed as an adjunct assistant professor at the Tulane School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine, he also serves in the same capacity at the LSU School of Medicine and the Xavier University College of Pharmacy, and maintains a continued role as Doctor of Community Medicine at Access Health Louisiana, a federally qualified health center. Dr. Griggs proudly serves as the founder and executive director of the Doc Griggs Foundation, a community-driven, student-activated, and professionally mentored organization that promotes community health by empowering the community to get checked, get fit, and get moving. And in 2020, the world was affected by the global pandemic of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. And since then, Doc Griggs has become a local, state, national, and international figure in explaining the risks, the exposure, the care, the prevention, and treatment against COVID-19. He has been adamant and intentional in providing ever-evolving information and opportunities for testing and vaccinations through community town hall meetings, news media outlets, animations, policy support, in-person events, community health clinics, and even more. You definitely have to check out his videos. And in an ever-changing world of uncertainty, Doc Griggs has proven himself to be a trusted voice of calm and reliable evidence-based information for the community as the world continues to strive for a new sense of healthy normal. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Griggs. Our second panelist is Ms. Deja Bonhomme. She serves as the Diabetes Program Manager for Well Ahead Louisiana, the Chronic Disease Prevention and Healthcare Access arm of the Louisiana Department of Health. And in her role, Ms. Bonham oversees the Bureau's statewide diabetes prevention and management efforts, which seek to implement evidence-based programming and provide best practice training and technical assistance to healthcare providers. She was born and raised in Lafayette, Louisiana, and holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Biological Science with a concentration in secondary education from LSU and a Master of Science degree in kinesiology from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. She is also a Well Coaches certified health and well-being coach, which allows her to impact her community by providing high quality wellness coaching. And Ms. Bonham joined Well Ahead in 2019 and has been very instrumental in cultivating community clinic linkages to implement policy, systems, environmental changes in order to reduce the burden of chronic disease in the states and ensure a healthier future for Louisiana's community. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Ms. Deja Bonhomme. Our next panelist, Ms. Terry Roberts, is a native of Lafayette, Louisiana as well. She is a certified health education specialist and the community education coordinator of the Women's Foundation. Ms. Roberts earned a bachelor's degree in kinesiology, health promotion and wellness and a master's degree in exercise science in fitness and performance. And she is a certified lifestyle coach and a recent graduate of LIA's Leadership Lafayette Class 35. She is a member of the Northside Community Health and Wellness Group and serves on the LCG's Health Equity Task Force, Health and Wellness Work Group, and Education Awareness and Training Subcommittees. She is a member of ACA's Arts and Education Committee and is an avid volunteer with United Way of Acadiana. And when Ms. Roberts is not volunteering or working in the community, she enjoys the blessings of being a wife to her husband, Joseph, mother to their 3 daughters, Kylie, Josie, and Corey, and 4 dogs, Rocky, Rex, Bruno, and Caesar. And listen to this, she is an all-natural pro figure competitor and competes twice a year. Miss Roberts loves completing jigsaw puzzles, playing family board games, and making crafts. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Miss Terry Roberts. Our next panelist is Miss Christine Castile. She is a family nurse practitioner and diabetes care and education specialist who is board certified in advanced diabetes management. Ms. Castile has a career of over 20 years and focusing on multiple aspects of diabetes, hypertension, kidney disease, and obesity. Partnering with local and state organizations, community leaders, healthcare providers, staff, to empower patients to participate in disease prevention and management strategies that allow them to reach and maintain wellness, it remains her passion. And she completed her master's in the science of nursing degree from University of Southwestern Louisiana, now known as University of Louisiana. And she also lives in Lafayette with her husband and 2 daughters. And ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Miss Christine Castile. And last but not least, we also have Dr. Renetta Allen. Dr. Renetta Allen is a family nurse practitioner with 17 years of experience in treating patients of all ages with various acute and chronic conditions, including hypertension and diabetes. And she also serves as a Deputy Chief Medical Officer at Inclusive Care, where she has worked for the past 17 years. Dr. Allen has earned a doctorate degree from Chatham University in Pennsylvania and completed her undergraduate work at Louisiana State University and the University of South Alabama. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Renetta Allen and all of our panelists that will be joining in this conversation today. They're going to help us with just going in a deeper dive about discussion about diabetes. And as we start this panel discussion, it is important that we continue to remain vigilant about diabetes and pursuing a healthier Louisiana. This panel discussion will be factual. It will be based on the sciences. It will address various questions regarding diabetes, and keeping in mind that people have a right to feel what they feel regarding their past, their present experiences of racism, sexism, mistreatment, or injustice. We know that these experiences play a part in people, populations, and communities' trust in the healthcare system. And so without further ado, I'm very excited to get this panel discussion started with our esteemed group of panelists. And so I'm going to open up this particular first question, and feel free, there will be several questions that I will pinpoint to several, each and every one of you. And then I feel free to open up and you can always respond to someone else or even tackle along to someone else's response as well. So the first question that I have for each and every one of you is, what is your profession and how is it related to diabetes? What is your profession and how is it related to diabetes? And we'll start with you, Dr. Griggs.
So first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for those that are tuning in. Thank you to our panelists. I think this would be fun, like healthy conversations. When you talk about professions, I am a medical doctor by training, health educator, do health educator, health advocacy, you name it. I tell people, community medicine is people, practice, and policy. A lot of times, most of the issues, not a lot of times, 99% of the times, most of the issues that we're running into is because the people that are affected by the practice aren't in the policy rooms when they're made. So a lot of times the policies will be out of touch with the people and the practices that we're recommending. Diabetes is one such case. I come from a family of 4 to 5 generations of diabetics, and we'll get into what diabetes is in later, but I don't know about the rest of my panelists, but up until the time I hit college, I thought diabetes was caused by sugar. And when my grandmother said that she had a little sugar behind her eye, saw a box of dominoes, and I would look in her cabinet to see if what she'd done to put that sugar there. So a lot of misconceptions. A lot of my job is to dispel a lot of misconceptions, but mostly to humanize these principles and diseases that we're talking about, to let them know that just because I have the medical doctorate and I read a bunch of books, lost a lot of hair along the way, doesn't mean I'm not human. There's a lot of things that happen to all of us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griggs. We'll open up the floor at this time to Ms. Terry Roberts. Let's hear from you.
Hi, so yes, I'm Terry Roberts. In my profession at Women's Foundation, I'm our community education coordinator for Kids on the Go and Healthy Me, our adult diabetes prevention programs and healthy living programs. And terms to diabetes and what we do is really prevention. It is education, meeting people where they are, with what they have, but educating them on choices, that they can do to prevent diabetes and to prevent obesity. And, we work with children and also with parents with our Healthy Me, because it starts at home. And so, that's our field of diabetes prevention and obesity prevention and education, getting those resources and education out there, along with, being a pro figure competitor. But it's good for people to see, like Doc just said, like, we're normal people, we, have lives, but we also want to educate. And that's the main thing, because once people know better, they do better. And if we can get that information out there, but meeting people where they are and making it relevant to them, I think that's how we can touch people and really change their lives.
Thank you so much, Ms. Roberts. And Ms. Deja Bonham will come to you, and then followed by Ms. Castile.
Great, thank you. So I am the Diabetes Program Manager with Wellhead, Louisiana. And in my role, I provide strategic oversight of all of our statewide diabetes prevention and management efforts. And our overall goal is really to increase awareness of and access to quality and evidence-based diabetes prevention and diabetes self-management education and support services. And so we provide technical assistance, we provide resources, education, training, as well as funding for the CDC's National Diabetes Prevention Program, as well as accredited diabetes self-management education and support services. And so our team is always striving to cultivate community clinical linkages to ensure that people who have diabetes or who are at risk for developing diabetes have access to quality care and resources that are needed to prevent, delay, and or manage their diabetes care. And so making sure that we are meeting them where they are, that we're working in those rural areas and those underserved areas so that we're reaching those people who need care the most.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Castile? Ms. Castile, you're muted.
Thank you. Nurse practitioner, I've been working in diabetes and related it for years. I was motivated and passionate by seeing how the complication of diabetes, and what keeps me going each day is how over the past 25 years, we've been able to find ways to prevent long-term complications. And I consult with all aspects of the real, where patients, we want to educate patients. We want to give them what they need, empower them to change behaviors. But we also, and I'm active in working with nurses, medical assistants, physicians, providers, because we literally want the entire team to be healthy. When my career, and now I have a large amount of nurses, medical assistants, our medical team, we want to be healthy. And the more I am able to work with the groups as a whole, that's where I feel we're going to impact change. Patients, along with the healthcare team, that empowers them, along with our local organizations, systems, and policymakers. And as Doc said earlier, becoming more active and encouraging others to be more active in laying out those policies and pushing them through.
Thank you so much, Ms. Castile, and you all are bringing up some important key aspects about diabetes, and we'll definitely come back to that. And I want to ask Dr. Allen for you to tell us about your profession and how it is related to diabetes.
Okay, so I'm also a family nurse practitioner. I work in a community health center, and diabetes is one of our top diagnoses, along with the other coexisting conditions such as hypertension and hyperlipidemia or high cholesterol. So I provide direct care to patients with diabetes, and also as the deputy medical director, I'm responsible for monitoring the quality measures to determine how well we're doing with patients with diabetes, how well the patients are doing with getting those A1Cs under control and getting the diabetes controlled and preventing complications.
Thanks, everyone, just for being able to talk about your role in diabetes care, prevention, management. And so in the beginning, we heard from Ms. Ayana in regards to talking about the statistics. We heard the statistics. Diabetes, more than 37 million people in the United States have diabetes. And so, Dr. Griggs, I'm going to start with you. Can you just tell us, and just to be able to mention to our audience, what is diabetes?
Diabetes. So there's a bunch of ways that we can go about this, but the simplest way, when I speak to audiences, be they doctors or be they community members, if you can, Dr. Williams, if you'll help me. So when we talk about, if the heart fails, we call it heart what? Failure. When the kidneys fail, they call it kidney failure. The liver fails, they call it liver failure. When the pancreas fails, they call it what? Diabetes. Diabetes. Whoa. Yeah, diabetes. The pancreas is an organ that regulates the sugar metabolism. Sugar is a source of energy for us. It wasn't the sugar behind my mom's eyes, but it regulates whether or not insulin and how insulin and glucose, which is another word for sugar, is used. Insulin opens the door. The sugar floats around in the bloodstream after we eat. The insulin stands at the door like a doorman and opens the door so the sugar can go in and do the work in the cells. And what happens is, if the central center for this, the main center for this is the pancreas. Well, what happens is diabetes is a dysregulation of that system. The body is unable to manage as we ingest ingest glucose. It's unable to properly manage the insulin, letting this pushing that lets the sugar go into the cells. And it's something that we consider a malady, but I want to say this real quickly. Whenever I talk about diabetes, again, I come from 4 or 5 generations of diabetics, to the point that they were, my family would, you would think they were, I didn't know what they were doing, but I know why they had all those needles. That didn't make sense, but everybody was diabetic. My grandmother was diabetic, and she ended up changing her life. That's why I came up with get checked, get fit, get moving. But we need to change our perspective on diabetes. Unfortunately, after Hurricane Katrina, I tried to go into contracting because a doctor without patients, a broke dude without a job. So I messed up a bunch of people's houses, right? I apologize to all those people, but I got a good lesson from it. They said that, Doc, if you're ever on a ladder and you're falling, jump. And it didn't make sense at the time, but it does now. And once it clicked, it clicked. It changes your perspective. If we start to look at diabetes as less of a malady, something that happens to us that we can't control, and more of a potential survival mechanism, particularly here in the agrarian South, it changes our perspective on things. It lowers our anxiety, lowers our stress, lowers our glucose. What I mean is, if you didn't have the mechanism 300-400 years ago, when our economy was based on what we would pick or what we would grow, we didn't have any snack machines, we didn't have any water breaks or water fountains. If you didn't have the metabolism to keep your blood sugar up from can't see in the morning to can't see at night, you died. The only people left were the people that had the genes to keep their blood sugars up. And because the work was so labor intensive and you burned up, the cells burned up that sugar, you could eat a big breakfast, a big lunch, a big dinner, we knew we would work it off. Well, with the evolution of technology, the Industrial Revolution, and as things progress, we can do everything from our phone right now, but we still have those same eating habits. But the good thing is, if you start to see that I have the genes that don't necessarily need to be turned on, but genes for survival, to let me survive, it changes your perspective on it, and you don't feel as defeated, because we all know having it's clinically, it's safer to have a higher blood sugar than to have an extremely low. Does that make sense? So diabetes is something that is not necessarily, it's not this monster that we can't control, but it's something that we know, and that if we harness it right, you can take the red pill or the blue pill in the matrix. If you take the right pill, you can live for a long time. That makes sense?
Thank you so much, Dr. Griggs. I mean, you definitely put it into perspective, because those are some of the things that we tend to hear from our patients, you know, especially what you brought up in regards to what we've heard from mom, what we've heard from grandma and family members. It, you know, that diagnosis of diabetes, at some point, a lot of people have, you know, heard it in terms of just, it is the end all. But like you
Doc, you
mentioned,
said it well. They said it just like that, die. It doesn't mean you're going to die. It's just diabetes. That's what they said, diabetes. That's it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dr. Griggs. And I'm gonna come back to you, because I really want to touch upon that in terms of some of the lifestyle changes that you talked about, and we'll definitely get into that in a few. And so I want to ask Ms. Castile in regards to, so Dr. Griggs talked about, you know, what is diabetes? And so can you tell us just in regards to what are the various types of diabetes, and are there certain types that are more common than others?
Yes, great. I'll be happy to. The two most common types are type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is more common. We have 90 to 95%, depending on your region, your community. And type 1 is only 5% that we see. Now, with type 1 and type 2, type 1, we've seen occur more often in younger individuals. We feel is related to autoimmune virus related that damages the cells that produce insulin. So type 1 patients are dependent on insulin. They take injections initially from the day they are diagnosed with diabetes. So the goal is to function the same way as he shared, but those patients may make more than enough or the body doesn't produce as much as it needs as time goes by. And also body surface area changes, and we tend to have more needs as we see weight occur, as well as lifestyle changes that occur that Doc even shared, but that happens in even a smaller period of time. As we, as he said, industry now, we have much higher rate of processed foods. So we tend to see type 2 diabetes happen a little more because of the rise in our obesity levels. And nowadays, if you're promoted, you're usually promoted to a sedentary job. So even in nursing, which is a large group of our population, teachers as well, when you progress, you actually are more sedentary, where our risk factors go up even higher.
So Ms. Castile, and I want to ask this. That's other chronic conditions that could cause diabetes as well.
Got you. Well, related to gestational diabetes, that has a mixture. There's so many areas we can go into in that direction. We have patients that become pregnant and had no idea that they were full-blown type 2 diabetes. Patients that may be pregnant and didn't know that they were pre-diabetes. So pregnancy sometimes is the very first time any patients even become aware of the idea of a touch of sugar, as Doc shared. I find that with gestational diabetes, it's usually a shock, just the same way the negative aspect of what I have diabetes. And often I share with patients, once you're diagnosed with gestational diabetes, from here on out, you may be healthier than you have ever been. Often we diagnose diabetes so late. So the pregnancy is often a call to action where mothers are at the point where the right education, the right resources, medication, social workers nearby, working within a city or community that can give them what they need, just as Terry alluded to earlier. There is when we can make a difference, having healthier babies, decrease mortality rates, and also those babies with the right education to the mother will end up being babies that are 3 years of age, eating more vegetables, low carbohydrate vegetables, eating healthier, and they won't grow up seeing diabetes as, oh my goodness, I have to eat right. It's no, diabetes, we eat healthy. Now you will be eating healthier like everyone else compared to, oh, it's diabetes. It's like, nope, you just didn't know that you needed to eat this way, and that this way you'll be feeling better longer.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Allen, I know I'm hearing in terms of the eating habits, I'm hearing the lifestyle modifications. Dr. Allen, can you tell us about those risk factors that are associated with developing diabetes? And then I'll be coming to you, Ms. Roberts and Ms. Bonham, just to kind of follow up on a couple of questions. So Dr. Allen, if you can answer that question for us.
So there are several risk factors for developing diabetes. We talked a little bit about overweight, inactivity, having that sedentary job and not exercising on a regular basis, obesity, people who tend to have more fat in the abdominal or stomach area have risk factors. Certain races or ethnicities, African Americans, Asian, Pacific Islanders, Hispanics have increased risk of developing diabetes. And then as we age, that increases the risk, especially starting after age 35, you kind of see the risk increasing because again, that's when that obesity or overweight status tends to creep in. And people who are pre-diabetic, of course, have an increased risk of developing diabetes because their body or the pancreas is starting to give out a little bit. So which, we diagnose them as pre-diabetic when they're not actually diabetic yet, but those numbers are heading in that direction. So they definitely have an increased risk for developing diabetes.
Thanks, Dr. Allen. And so, Ms. Roberts, just to kind of build upon that, when we look at in terms of risk of developing diabetes, are people who are members of same racial and ethnic minority groups or groups with lower socioeconomic status, are they at a higher risk of developing diabetes? And if so, why?
So yes, they are. So like Dr. Allen just said, African Americans, Hispanic, Latino populations are more at risk and have a higher risk because of their status. Like you said, the socioeconomic status, the social determinants of health, whether that's the access to health quality foods, whether that's access to areas where they can perform physical activity, if there's a park nearby, or if they're in a safe neighborhood. So those factors tie in. And if you're not in a safe neighborhood, you may not get as much physical activity as someone who had a higher socioeconomic, status than you. A lot of times income, poverty levels, all of those tie in, and we see a lot of those determinants in populations of African Americans and in the populations of Hispanic and Latino communities.
And I want to kind of follow up with that, with you, Ms. Bonham, just in regards to looking at those factors of diabetes. Can you tell us about some societal contributing factors of diabetes?
Yes, for sure. So I definitely think, kind of similar to what Terry said, looking at, where individuals born, where are they growing up, where are they living, where are they working, all of those things play a key part in their prevalence rates for diabetes. So we look at our environment around us. That built environment plays a huge role in what you're exposed to and what you're going to have access to. So those are things like thinking about, what are there a lot of fast food restaurants? Do you have access to fresh food at farmers markets? Are there grocery stores nearby? Are there green spaces? Can you get out and walk safely? So all of those things really play a key part. So unfortunately, we see a lot of our, African American and Latino populations living in areas where they're considered food swamps, which means that basically there's a lot of fast food, junk food, convenience stores that are outnumbering those healthy options. But then also we have folks who are living in food deserts where there's just very little access to those affordable and nutritious foods. And so in those areas, we are going to see, more racial minorities. We're going to see less affluent neighborhoods. And those are the folks we typically see have that disproportionate burden of developing type 2 diabetes. And so even, across our state in our very rural areas, typically we see in rural areas, adults are about 16% more likely to have diabetes compared to adults who are living in those urban areas. So definitely kind of those societal factors of what you have access to, what you're getting educated on, and what you're just seeing day to day plays a key role in how, if you're going to develop diabetes or not.
Thank you all so much just for your comments. We're talking about risk factors of diabetes, and Ms. Castile, I want to come back to you, and Dr. Griggs, I'll be coming back to you as well. So we talk about these risk factors. Is diabetes genetic? And if someone has a family history, should there be more concern?
I would like to address that, and definitely want to get Doc's take on it as well. I'm a little discouraged when patients come in and they say, well, we explain, yes, your parents have it, it's generations, there's increased risk, but I share with them, it's like Ms. Bonon said, it's not strictly genetic. So yes, your mom and dad had it, but there's environmental factors in your community, policies play a role, but also there's factors in your home. So often, sometimes patients share, I don't know, we always have mints on the table for when the grandkids come in. We always have had, we consider a breakfast, 3 slices of toast, and that's just the way it is, or else something's wrong. We always do smoked meats or processed meats at least 4 or 5 times a week. It's quick and easy, economical. Well, again, we think, okay, well, yes, genetic, that is a factor. You're dealt a certain amount of cards. You're dealt a certain amount of cards and you play them. But your environment in which you do every day changes. Right there, your kids, your grandkids, just by what you're. You plan your meals on Sunday prior to shopping. Plan your meals for each day. Those are some of the examples where I stress to patients, it's an environment, depending on where you grow. There's so many variables that play a role also.
Thank you so much, Ms. Castillo. Any Dr. Griggs, I see you've unmuted.
Yeah, so she's spot on. It's called epigenetics. You tell people all the time that just because, I want you to think back to the survival mechanism that I talked about. Just because you have the switch to flip in case things are, you need to metabolize and save your glucose, doesn't mean that it necessarily will be. I come from 4 to 5 generations of diabetics, and I'm not diabetic because I started having conversations early with my grandmother and my grandparents, my relatives, like, what is this? How old were you when you were first diagnosed? What were you doing when you were first diagnosed? What weight were you at when you were first diagnosed? And I know COVID pushed a lot of us, myself included, closer to that weight. And I'm not trying to see it because I'm not diabetic yet. So it's not necessarily a plague or a curse. It's something that can be managed. And again, even should you cross the threshold, because of those factors at home, we just came through a pandemic. All of us just sat in our houses more than we ever did in our professional careers for the last 2 to 3 years with the danger of food, eating, because man, I know I had some macaroni last night. It's Thanksgiving. I'm gonna eat all the turkey this year because I'm not hungry, but this is good. And you know what? I'm gonna walk as soon as I finish. And you walk straight to the bedroom or the couch and pass out. So it is things, health begins at home, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. My grandmother, I was 11 years old when she was diagnosed with diabetes. She changed her life and everyone's life in our family. And she died at age 90, almost 100 pounds lighter, and not taking any meds for diabetes. So it's typically in your hands, but you got to have that conversation and you have to have the investment.
Anybody else would like to add to what Ms. Castile or Dr. Griggs mentioned as well? And please feel free to provide any additional feedback. I know just kind of going back to some of those statistics that I talked about in the beginning, when we look at diabetes, 1 in 5 people don't even know it. And so Dr. Griggs, just kind of coming back to you and just really being able to talk about those warning signs for someone who has diabetes, don't even know it. Can you just provide us with a little bit of information about that?
So yes, so one of the things that you'll find out, and I don't have to be a doctor, we don't have to have a panel to say it, is that once someone is diagnosed with diabetes, they tell you that one of the first things that you see is that, man, doc, I was peeing a lot. I was urinating more than anything. The actual Greek word for diabetes, and diabetes it means passing through, and it talks about discharging of large volumes of urine. What happens is, remember I said the mechanism of the pancreas gets messed up, so the sugar doesn't actually get metabolized, it stays in the bloodstream. So you'll see as the sugar goes out, it drags a lot of the tissue fluid with it, and more fluid than normal. So they constantly people find themselves dehydrated. So frequent urination, constantly feeling thirsty. The excess sugar in the bloodstream, that can damage the blood vessels and decrease the amount of blood that gets to the tissues. So you'll see blurred vision. Because your body's working hard to keep up with energy a lot, you find that people are constantly tired all the time. Cuts and bruises, but if you remember that if there's decreased blood flow, can't heal a cut without blood flow, which is why you worry about the amputations, diabetics. Numbness and tingling, that's your nerves trying to tell you, hey, something's wrong. There's too much sugar damaging the nerves or decreasing the blood flow. So you get numbness and tingling in your toes and feet. You get the blurred vision, cuts and bruises that won't heal. You get the constant urination. And believe it or not, particularly in type 1 diabetics, you'll find people are constantly hungry because they're eating all the time, but nothing is getting metabolized. So those are the ones to really look for. If you're riding in your car with one of your friends, your partner, whoever, and they got to stop and pee all the time, and you haven't gone to get a beer yet, they haven't done anything, then you should ask them to get checked and ask about being checked for diabetes.
Thank you. And so audience, you've heard those common symptoms of diabetes. Ms. Roberts, I want to come to you and just also to Ms. Bonham. Let me come to you first in terms of just kind of asking, if somebody is concerned about whether or not they have diabetes, they may have experienced some of the symptoms that Dr. Griggs just mentioned, what should be that next step?
So I definitely think, reaching out to their healthcare provider, kind of explaining what their symptoms are, so that way they can kind of see what's going on. In addition, there's several ways to assess your risk online. Specifically, I know Well Ahead has created an online media campaign, which is called Now's the Time, which encourages individuals to complete the prediabetes risk test, which allows them to very quickly know their risk. The test is only 7 questions, and that way they can kind of take action to prevent diabetes. And they can also be connected to local diabetes prevention programs. So for those who they know they're overweight, they have a family history, for women who may have had gestational diabetes and they think they may be at risk for having prediabetes or developing type 2 diabetes, definitely would encourage them to take that brief risk assessment. In addition, we do have a database on our website, our community resource guide, where they can also find, for those who are diagnosed with diabetes, they can find local diabetes self-management education and support services within their local areas. So definitely encourage them to take those next steps, to talk to their healthcare provider, and then find those evidence-based programs, get that education, so that way you are equipped with the knowledge, but your family and community are also equipped with the knowledge as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bonham. You mentioned a couple of just key points: becoming educated, getting equipped with those resources, telling somebody, just not being afraid to really being able to obtain and seek advice from a provider, not ignoring some of those symptoms that Dr. Griggs mentioned as well. And before, because you all kind of brought up a couple of key points that I want to come back to before going to that, and just kind of moving on into some of the diabetic rates and just different things that we see disproportionately affecting our communities. I want to kind of go back to pre-diabetes. And so we talked about 1.2 million people having pre-diabetes. And so Dr. Allen, can you tell us what is pre-diabetes? I know we just talked about diabetes and we don't want to confuse our audience. but we just want to let them know that there is a pre-diabetes. And so can you tell us what is that?
Right, there is a pre-diabetes, and sometimes with pre-diabetes, you start to get these symptoms where you're starting to urinate a little bit more than normal. You're thirsty more often because you're urinating so much more. Pre-diabetes, again, it's the stage before you develop diabetes. Some people will experience hypoglycemia, low blood sugars, because the pancreas is trying to work, but it's stressed. It's going toward the diabetes diagnosis. So that's the opportune time to get things back in order, to exercise, to get your weight down, to eat healthy, and try to avoid the onset of diabetes. It's a serious condition, and if it's not managed or taken care of, they will eventually develop diabetes.
So you all talked about in regards to just being able to make sure that it's not ignored, and a lot of times we see that with diabetes that can transpire just over years, in terms of before it even gets to that actual diagnosis of diabetes. So really being able to kind of come back to Ms. Roberts and looking at social determinants of health. How does it affect our health, specifically as it relates to diabetes? And then I want to kind of come back and open up the floor to talk about, Dr. Griggs, you brought up a good point in regards to COVID-19 and how it affected us tremendously, in terms of just really being able to amplify some of those rates that we saw with diabetes.
Yes, so social determinants of health are conditions in which people live, where they work, where they play, where they learn, where they congregate, where they are, that plays an effect on their health, that has an effect on their health. And I mentioned earlier about access to care, access to quality care, whether that's if you're in an area where you have insurance coverage, if you have a provider that takes your insurance, if you have access to a primary care provider, your health literacy. Do you actually understand what it is your doctor is telling you? Access to care, access to education, and the quality of that education, whether that's high school graduation rates, whether that is higher education enrollment and attainment, language and literacy. Do you understand the words that your doctor is telling you? Are you able to comprehend what he's telling you or she telling you about diabetes, about your obesity, about your health in general? Whether we have childhood education and that early childhood development, that plays a part on how they're going to be as adults, how they're going to grow up, and how they're going to learn and receive things, whether that's your social and your community context, how your community plays a part in your health and the foods you eat and the activities that you engage in. If you engage in physical activity, if that's conducive in the environment that you live, or your economic stability. Do you have, are you in poverty? Do you have a job or income to where you can take care of your family, or even have access or the budget or the financial means to get healthy foods, to make healthier choices? Your neighborhood, whether, the quality of your housing, do you have quality water? Do you have a roof over your head, period? Access to transportation. And believe it or not, more than 50% of people in a rural area does not have access to transportation. They don't have access to, a car or a busing system to make it to a provider or to make it to an area that's not a food desert. Whether they have the availability of the healthy foods, of the healthy air, the quality of their water, because we see that a lot, in rural areas, the obesity rates are high, but do we even have access to get healthy foods? Yes, I have an access to a Burger King or McDonald's, that's in my budget, but I don't have access to that healthy food, which, is in another area because of my lack of transportation. Or if that area has, a lot of crime in the neighborhood, all of those determinants, can depict on whether or not somebody's going to be healthy or have access to a healthy life in order to make those decisions to be healthy.
Yeah. And Dr. Griggs, I know when when the pandemic hit, there was so much information that came out at that particular time. And even now we're seeing the statistics as it relates to chronic diseases and the correlation of COVID-19 to several chronic conditions, particularly looking at diabetes. Can you tell us about how COVID-19 has affected diabetes prevention and management? And then anyone, of our panelists, feel free to add on any comments.
So thank you for that. I'll go so far as to say it affected COVID-19 prevention, diagnosis, and management. What happened is the studies are showing that COVID increased the incidence and rates of diabetes. Why? Let's talk about it. Again, the COVID we found is more of a cardiovascular disease with a respiratory mode of entry, meaning that it gets into your body through the breathing that we talked about. But once it gets in, it damages those blood vessels. And we know that it does particular damage to the pancreas, and we've explained earlier how that works with diabetes. If you add in the stress soup that we've all been living in, I know we're talking about diabetes and y'all think I'm talking about food, but I'm not. I'm talking about the stress soup of two hormones, cortisol and epinephrine. Epinephrine raises your blood sugar to keep your blood pressure up in case you have to fight or run. And cortisol, it decreases your decision-making processes, but it also raises your blood sugars. And if you live in an environment of chronic stress with a chronic elevation in blood sugar and a chronic elevation in blood pressure, you run the risk of those chronic diseases sticking around. And that's what we've seen with diabetes. Now, you want to compound on top of that, dealing with those stresses all the time, interrupted sleep patterns, increase in weight gain and decreased physical activity. That decreases your amount of REM sleep and leads to sleep apnea, all of which increases that cortisol and it increases your blood sugar. So what happens is you have people that are perfectly healthy. I have a friend, a colleague that was perfectly healthy and now he is diabetic and we're the same age. He's a doctor, the whole nine. So you could compound those factors on top of what we already knew. I think it was brought up earlier. The question before is about the social determinants of health. COVID ripped the Band-Aid off of the health inequities. And it tipped the scale. If you stress any system, you're going to find out the gaps, the leaks, and where it could potentially break. And that includes our body, right? So COVID affected every aspect of our lives. It increased the incidence and the stress on our pancreas. And some of us, myself included, put a little bit more stress on there because we stress ate and that didn't help anything. I just say I'm putting on my Christmas weight. That's what I'm doing. And I'm going to take a diabetic walk away from it, a non-diabetic walk away from it after the holidays. Yeah.
Things that's a great. Anybody wants to add, so we got to make sure we don't, especially with Christmas coming up, no extra gumbo, no extra anything.
Throw that turkey away. It's no good no more. Throw it away.
Thank you so much for that.
I'd like to speak to that too. Ms. Bonhomme may be able to go ahead and chime in. The holidays definitely can have its own challenges, but also its opportunities. So we come together, right? And it's wonderful the family comes together, and there's some challenges. But the good thing is with Well Ahead, we have just a couple of minutes to go ahead and take the pre-diabetes risk scoring test, as well as diabetes. So as a family, you can come together and that can actually be the time where you have the conversation. Just like Dr. Griggs shared, often that conversation is not discussed. Everybody's a little uncomfortable because they see the diagnosis in a negative way. Because in the past, we saw it as a failure or, oh, she has diabetes, let's not talk about it. It's like, no, she has diabetes, let's talk about it so that we can change our future, change our family's future. And so really encourage everybody. There's a film that Well Ahead has where literally it takes 3 minutes. The guy discusses it. You can show that at the table. It's on YouTube, as well as you'll have some of the resources when we end today that we can really grab onto, where this new year, 2023, as Terry said, kids all the way up to the grandparents can come together with ideas, recipes, et cetera, being more active on the day of Thanksgiving, whether that means we put on Motown for 30 minutes and do some dancing, or we do walking, but really work with the family to be creative with new ideas of how we make our family better.
Thank you. And feel free, anyone, I know you've talked about Well Ahead. everybody kind of pitched in and talked about several different resources. So if you all would like to add on before we have our last closing remarks about what are the resources available? Let's talk about, in regards to Well Ahead, Women's Foundation, all of these different organizations that provide education, different resources that our audience could potentially go to and find out additional information about diabetes.
Yeah, so I can definitely speak to what Well Ahead is doing for diabetes management and prevention. So like was just mentioned, we do encourage everyone to take that pre-diabetes risk test. It does not take very long. It is 7 very quick questions, and you just kind of check it off and you very quickly assess your risk. And then from there, if you score a 5 or higher, you're able to see, okay, I'm at risk for diabetes. And then you can really make that conscious decision to take action and talk to your healthcare provider or look for a local diabetes prevention program. One of the things that Well Ahead does is we work with organizations and we provide funding for them to start up their programs. And so that National Diabetes Prevention Program, it's a year-long lifestyle change program that provides group support. It provides a trained lifestyle coach, and each session allows participants to learn more about making small, smart lifestyle changes. So they'll focus on things like weight loss, healthy eating, being more active, managing stress. And I think one of the great things about it is it's really tailored for anybody to learn it. So, if you have a mom in the program, she can very easily take that home to her kids. And now her kids are also learning healthier habits so that they don't have to deal with these things in the future. And so I think definitely kind of getting the entire family involved, talking to your community members, hosting these types of things at your churches, places where you congregate more often can be very beneficial and helpful to make sure that the education is getting out there.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. And Ms. Roberts?
Yes, I was going to say Women's Foundation does have a national diabetes prevention program as well, our Healthy Me program. And like Daisha just said, it is a lifestyle change. It's not going to happen overnight. We've had adults, and our program is for adults 18 and over. So we've had adults, our typical age 45 to 65. They've had these habits for pretty much their whole life. And so, like she said, it is a lifestyle change. You pick one small habit that you want to change this week, and then you follow up. So the first week, hey, I might want to substitute 2 bottles of soda for 2 bottles of water. Okay, so how did you do on that? And you come back and, oh, so now I'm drinking water every single day. How about I work on something else? So now I'm going to work on, eating more green vegetables. And so we'll do that for a week. And it's just a lifestyle change, like she said. And we go over the stress management, the triggers, like what triggers you to eat that box of cookies, at night when nobody's watching, or what triggers you, if you get upset, to say, hey, I'm going to go eat some food, or I'm going to go to McDonald's because I'm upset. Let's change those behaviors. Let's change those, triggers, our reactions to those triggers, so that we're making a healthier option. And, with Healthy Me, they get the support, like Daisha said. It is a year-long commitment. You get the support not only of your lifestyle coach that you can contact anytime, but you get the support from the rest of the group. Because, people, it is hard to make a change. So they know that they're not alone, on their journey. They have 10 other people who are walking, the same journey, just on different paths. So they get that support. And I know, we're talking about adults, but one thing that I love about Women's Foundation is that we cater to the whole family. The Kids in the Go program is a pediatric healthy living program, diabetes prevention program for students. So we see kids as young as 3 years old to incorporate healthy habits and just healthy choices all the way up until high school. And so the students, we go into, like Daisha said, we go into non-profits, other nonprofits, other for-profits, schools, community centers, faith-based organizations, and we work with their children. And the parents are there sometimes because the parents are making the decisions with the food, but we teach the kids like different components of health, the nutrition aspect of it, the physical activity, and also the behavioral, because we associate, food sometimes with how we feel. And so if we can reach the children as you're younger in elementary and middle school and high school to help shape them to be, healthy adults, hey, let's get into some habits of making a healthy goal. Let's get into the habit of making a healthier choice. Instead of buying, the bag of potato chips, how about I get some fruit instead? So we teach the children all of these components. We teach them why it's, good and why it's healthy to make a healthier choice. We teach them about the vitamins and the minerals and how it plays the part into making the body healthy for when they are adults and they do not fall into that same line of the obesity, and then, the diabetes. So yes, we do have, the Kids in the Go program for the students that are under 18, and then also Healthy Me, which is a lifestyle change program that caters to adults and our older population.
Thank you all so much. And I know we can have this conversation for a long time. It's needed, especially, being able to talk about the risk factors, talking about how we can better manage diabetes. I'm going to end with this last question. And so, Dr. Allen, before going into our last closing takeaways, so panelists, I want you to think about your takeaways that you would like to provide our audience. Some people in the audience, Dr. Allen, may be saying, hey, I have time. Maybe I'm afraid to get it checked. I'm afraid to, be able to move forward or whatnot. So can you kind of talk about and just closing in regards to, what happens if it's left untreated, and what should our audience, do in regards to being able to move forward? And Dr. Allen, you may
But again,
there we
and
go.
ignoring. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Dr. Allen.
Okay. People need to be checked for diabetes while it's ignoring the signs. If you start talking to them, they are having some signs. So now is the time to get checked. Everybody needs to know where they stand in regards to being diabetic or pre-diabetic. Especially, again, we have that family history in a lot of families. So, we need to know. Heart attack, stroke, blindness, kidney disease. A lot of people wound up because being untreated, just a multiple amount of illnesses and complications, amputations. I see sometimes I want to start patients on insulin because their numbers are so high, and they'll say, oh, well, my aunt was on insulin and she died. Well, she didn't die because she was on insulin. She died because she wasn't treated. She wasn't taking the medication. She still ate diets or foods high in sugar, didn't monitor her diet. It wasn't the insulin that caused her to lose her leg and die. It was the diabetes uncontrolled. So it's important to find out where you are and get it under control. If you're diabetic, we find out that you're pre-diabetic. Again, there are some lifestyle modifications that you can make to prevent diabetes from ever happening if you make that lifestyle change. And then if you already have diabetes, we can still put you on medication, incorporate lifestyle modification, and control it so you won't get these damaging complications from diabetes. And eventually the ultimate complication is death.
Okay. So, wow, this was an amazing panel discussion. And so as we close, quickly, if I can just hear from each panelist, just in one sentence, what's your takeaway for our audience as it relates to diabetes? Dr. Allen, we'll start with you and then we'll move to Ms. Castile.
So my takeaway again is hearing all of the resources out there to prevent diabetes. It's important that we get patients enrolled in those programs to help to change their lifestyles, change their eating habits, and instead of passing on the sweet potato pie recipes with the sugar of 10 cups of sugar in it, down to our children, pass on healthy eating habits and healthy exercise and regular exercise. I think that's where we need to be now, is prevention. We already know diabetes out here. We spend a lot of money treating diabetes, but we need to prevent this from happening.
Thanks, Dr. Allen. Prevention. Ms. Castile, what's your takeaway?
Takeaway is number one, pre-diabetes, diabetes, You want to first figure out, am I overweight? Well, what I'm going to lose 5 to 10 pounds. In the majority of patients, you'll see a difference, 5 to 10. Establish eating vegetables, a half of your plate, low carbohydrate vegetables. Type it into Google, low carbohydrate vegetables. Third, get moving. Activity, if that involves you're in a neighborhood that's not safe, no sidewalks, you have a broom, sweep your floors every morning, okay? Mop every morning. Be creative with your activity so that you have a healthy life, not just fighting diabetes, but a healthier life and future.
Thank you, Ms. Castile. Ms. Roberts, and then Ms. Bono.
Yes, so takeaways. Prevention is key. Like Doc just said, the diabetes is there, but prevention is the key. Let's get educated. Let's change our habits. Let's increase our physical activity. And I don't know if you guys noticed, I didn't say exercise, because when we say exercise, people think it's a chore and I got to go to the gym and I have to buy equipment. But if you have a water bottle at home, if you have a bag of beans, if you have some rice, if you have canned anything, you can use that as a weight and you can do some physical activity at home, rearrange your furniture, mow your lawn, rake the grass, get moving, drink more water, lay off the sodas and the high fatty and high sugary drinks. But let's get moving and let's educate ourselves. And parents, take advantage of the free programs that you have in your area. Take advantage of the programs for your kids so that they can learn and you guys can learn as a family how to make healthier choices and overall have a better quality of life.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Ms. Bono.
So my key takeaway is just to take action. So knowing what your risk is, knowing where to locate these programs, educating yourself, not looking at prevention as something that's daunting, not looking at changing your eating habits as some special diet, but just looking at it truly as a lifestyle change and incorporating it as such. And then once you get educated, also sharing that knowledge. So share the knowledge with your family, share it with your community. So that way, while you're getting better, everyone around you is getting better as well.
Dr. Griggs, take us home.
Take us home. I can't believe you asked me that question. Y'all act like I wasn't going to say get checked, get fit, get moving. The take home is to get checked. Get checked. Start with by climbing your family tree, knowing your family history, knowing your family activity history, find out everything they were eating, they were doing, and then making an action plan together as a family. Get fit, healthy food, eat the healthy foods. We spoke about the plate. The plate is can be the size of your hand. My grandmother had us eating off a saucer instead of a big old plate. And we all thought we were on punishment, but it worked. And then as far as exercise, I agree with everyone here. We just get moving. Find something that you like to do and just do it. Weights aren't for everyone, but healthy life is. Bam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griggs, and thanks to all of our panelists and thanks to all of our audience. Ms. Ayana, I will bring you back in regards to closing today's webinar.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dr. Williams, Doc Griggs, Ms. Bonham, Ms. Roberts, Ms. Castile, and Dr. Allen for your responses and for being a part of this especially important panel discussion. As community gatekeepers and medical providers participating in this discussion, each of you honestly has helped to enrich people, populations, and communities' awareness, and you've possibly empowered others' readiness. So thank you so much. All right, let's get this PowerPoint back up for everyone so we can close out this webinar. So we heard a lot today from our panel regarding these different facts. We'll just go over them once more for everyone. Let's see. All righty. So yes, so as we stated before, more than 37 million people in the United States have diabetes and 1 in 5 of them don't know it. We've discussed today different ways that you can know you may have it, so you should go get checked. In Louisiana specifically, more than 1.2 million people, or roughly 34% of the adult population, have prediabetes due to higher than normal blood sugar levels. Preventing and treating diabetes involves understanding the various types, recognizing the factors associated with increased risk, and making certain lifestyle changes. So be sure, as we stated, to get up-to-date and accurate information from credible sources related to diabetes, like the Louisiana Department of Health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, American Diabetes Association, your healthcare provider, and more. Also, I want to thank all of our attendees today for coming and listening to this discussion. I hope that you found something enriching and valuable that you can take back and add to your discussions with your families and within your communities. Please also utilize the resources that we will be emailing to you all after today's presentation. You are also encouraged to complete our webinar participation survey to provide feedback to BCPHE for future events. I will add that to the chat, and there will also be a QR code with that link at the end of the presentation. Also, once more, for those of you who may have Medicaid insurance, if your medical insurance coverage is from Medicaid, then you must make sure that your information is up to date. This includes your address. If you do not update your information, you may miss out on important letters from Medicaid, and you could lose your health insurance coverage. So to update your information, you can visit the self-service portal at the website on the screen, www.ldh.la.gov/MyMedicaid, or call 1-888-342-6207. At this time, I will bring in the Director of the Bureau of Community Partnerships and Health Equity to close out our final Candid Conversations on Health webinar of the year. Devondra?
Thank you so much, Ms. Usuri. And yes, this has been a wonderful webinar, extremely informative. Thank you for all of our panelists for bringing us through a wonderful 2022 and ending on such a high note. I hope everyone is motivated and encouraged to go and get fit and get active and get moving and lower any risk for diabetes. And if you are already diabetic, lower any type of symptoms or consequences of it. Before we go, I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us and participated in our Candid Conversations on Health webinar series throughout this entire year. This includes the staff of the Bureau of Community Partnerships and Health Equity and the Bureau of Media and Communications for executing these needed conversations. A huge thanks goes to the entire Louisiana Department of Health's team, especially our Well Ahead team that joined us tonight for the webinar. A huge, and last but not least, a sincere and special thank you to the Secretary of the Department of Health, Dr. Courtney Ann Phillips, for her continued leadership in pursuing a healthier Louisiana. With that, I will bid you a wonderful 2022. We will see you with an all-new series in 2023, and this will conclude our event for tonight. Good night to you all and happy holidays.